Well, we started tonight's show with a segment about race. That's an uncomfortable topic, and in some ways it's an unresolvable one. We'd probably be better off if we talked about it less. A lot of us would be grateful if we were allowed to talk about it less, but our elites won't let us. They push racial conflict on us constantly. They never stop. The media does it, the people in charge don't do it, and it's bad. It makes people hate each other. It's terrible for this country. So why do they keep doing it? Simple. It's a strategy. Divide and conquer. It's a lot easier to run a country for your own benefit when the population is distracted by tribalism, as ours now is. They do it on purpose. But they're exposed in the new book, Ship of Fools. The book is coming out this fall. You can order it now. It's mostly lessons learned from this show and the segments we do on it. I hope you like it. That's about it for us tonight. The weekend is coming. Tune in every night starting Monday to the show that's the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. DVR it if you can figure out how that works. But more than anything, have a great night and a great weekend. See you soon.
And welcome to Hannity. All right, tonight we have incredible, amazing news on three major fronts. Buckle up tonight. First, the June 12th summit with North Korea is officially back on. A huge development, as earlier today a top deputy from the Hermit Kingdom hand-delivered a letter from Kim Jong-un to President Trump. We're going to tell you what we know about this letter in just a moment. And also tonight, President Trump is succeeding in a massive way. Bad news for Democrats when we do great here at home, because the economy is booming. The job numbers are now breaking even more records. 3.8% unemployment, the lowest African-American unemployment in history, a jobs market so robust, even the New York Times today is saying, quote, they're running out of words to describe how good the economy really is. Now, we're going to contrast this economy to former President Barack Obama's pathetic economy. And also tonight, we have major breaking news from John Solomon, a brand new bombshell report detailing how the Obama administration may have pressured the FBI to monitor the Trump campaign before that so-called official investigation was even authorized. Now, Solomon's report also uncovers the FBI's possible misconduct surrounding their use of spies. And Sarah Carter with breaking news. She's blowing the whistle on even more spying abuse against the Trump campaign, including a possible coordinated effort to monitor Trump associates by some of our closest allies abroad. This is now beginning to get so much bigger than we ever thought. Now, both Solomon and Sarah Carter will be here in just a minute. And meanwhile, the former CIA director, deep state sycophant, John Brennan, is calling President Trump paranoid. We'll respond to Brennan's latest ridiculous meltdown in a few minutes. And also, we'll highlight some of the growing calls for the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein to recuse himself from the Russia investigation. Lindsey Graham is now joining us. So much to cover. Sit tight. Buckle up. A very important Friday breaking news opening monologue. All right, tonight, major progress on three big fronts, especially with the president and North Korea and the negotiations. The June 12th summit is back. Now, only hours ago, a top lieutenant from North Korea named Kim Yong-chol hand-delivered a personal note to Kim Jong-un, to President Trump. And according to the Wall Street Journal, this note was described as fairly basic, but reportedly expressed Kim Jong-un's interest in holding the nuclear summit. Now, earlier today, here is how the president reacted. Let's take a look.
The meeting on June 12th in Singapore went very well. It's really a get-to-know-you kind of a situation. Mike has spent 2 days doing this. We've gotten to know their people very well, and we will. You people are going to have to travel because you'll be in Singapore on June 12th. And I think it'll be a process. It's not, I never said it goes in one meeting. I think it's going to be a process. But the relationships are building, and that's a very positive thing. We're talking about years of hostility, years of problems, years of really hatred between so many different nations. But I think you're going to have a very positive result in the end, not from one meeting. We're not going to we're not going to go in and sign something on June 12th, and we never were. We're going to start a process. And I told them today, take your time. You can go fast, we can go slowly. But I think they'd like to see something happen, and if we can work that out, that'd be good.
Do you believe Kim is committed to denuclearization?
Yeah, I do think so. He'd like to see it happen. He wants to be careful. He wants to be, he's not going to run and do things.
All right, that's the president. Great news, by the way, for the entire world. And look at what we've won so far. Now, the president's scheduled to hold a series of weekend briefings at Camp David about this upcoming summit, where the United States plans to negotiate the unilateral denuclearization of North Korea and the Korean Peninsula. Amazing news for the world. There's promise, there's hope, and by the way, your media said would never happen. We're going to have a lot more on this later in the show tonight, but first, huge, massive news on the economic front. The economy in the United States is now booming officially. We are breaking records month after month. In May, a robust 223,000 jobs were added. The unemployment rate in the United States is now at an 18-year low. Jobless claims dropping to 3.8%. In fact, we've only seen a number that low since 1969. The Mets won the World Series. And get this, African-American unemployment also at an all-time low for the first time, 5.9%. Consumer confidence at a 17-year high. Look at that headline from the New York Times. This had to kill them. We ran out of words to describe how good the job numbers are. Now, the president's economic agenda is clearly succeeding. And despite what the Destroy Trump media tells you night after night after night, this country is in a so much better place, more prosperous place with President Trump at the helm. Numbers do not lie. Let's take a trip down memory lane and contrast with President Obama's horrific economic track record. It saw virtually no growth, record high distribution of food stamps. 13 million more Americans were on food stamps. 8 million more Americans were in poverty. We had the lowest labor participation rate since the 70s, the worst home ownership rate in 51 years, the worst recovery since the 40s, and he doubled the national debt. Yeah, that was Barack Obama's record. We'll get back to all this major news on the economic front later in the show. But now we got to turn to some other breaking news tonight, and this is huge from John Solomon. His brand new bombshell report, the FBI's efforts to monitor the Trump campaign actually originated months before the FBI authorized the counterintelligence investigation into so-called Russian election interference. This after, quote, foreign figures contacted Trump campaign advisors and provided the FBI with hearsay allegations of Trump-Russia collusion. Now, according to John Solomon, these foreign figures, including some of the trusted intelligence sources and even some Hillary Clinton supporters. In other words, what this means is members of the deep state, that upper echelon that we talk about, Clinton sycophants, they were literally flooding the FBI with lies, unverified, uncorroborated, anti-Trump material. And there's more. Remember the lovebird, Strzok and Page? John Solomon tonight has uncovered a series of new texts from these two anti-Trump FBI officials that show the Obama administration was likely involved in steering this investigation against the Trump campaign, including one text that took place as the FBI was opening their investigation into so-called Russian meddling, where Lisa Page writes, quote, "We're not going to withstand the pressure soon." And then Page and Strzok also expressing fears that Obama would, quote, hijack their investigation or leak details to the press. And in another text from Peter Strzok, he indicated that the Obama administration was very much involved in the FBI investigation, writing, quote, "The White House," meaning the Obama White House, "is running this." So what did Obama know? When did he know it? What did his inner circle know? When did they know it? It's now time to put the former president and his entire team under oath. Now, Sarah Carter, also tonight, another new report and bombshell detailing the possible connection between an international spying alliance called the Five Eyes. You can't put this in a novel. And the rampant surveillance of the Trump campaign. It's even bigger than we thought. After all, as Solomon and Carter both reported, the investigation into Trump-Russia collusion, remember, it originated abroad in London. Now, the United Kingdom is a key member of this Five Eyes alliance. And despite all of this, you got the lunatic, former communist, former CIA director under Obama, John Brennan, now calling President Trump paranoid for expressing concerns over deep state spying. We already know it's true. How could it be paranoid? Sounds like he's very defensive. Take a look.
I think Mr. Trump has demonstrated a paranoia and insecurity, as well as a real concern about the investigation that is underway. Certainly his tweets do not seem like they're coming from a person of innocence and confidence. Mr. Trump is going to promote his narrative. He certainly is going to continue to try to discredit the FBI and the CIA and others. But I think, make no mistake about it, the American justice system, I think, is going to prevail in this endeavor to get to the bottom of who might have been collaborating and working with foreign actors to try to undermine the integrity of the election.
All right, remember, this is the same John Brennan who went on national TV a few months ago and told the world that Donald Trump should be very, very worried. Sounds like a deep state threat. Take a listen.
I think he's afraid of the president of Russia.
Why?
Well, I think one can speculate as to why. That the Russians may have something on him personally that they could always roll out and make his life more difficult. Clearly, I think it's important for us to be able to improve relations with Russia. But the fact that he has had this fawning attitude toward Mr. Putin has not said anything negative about him. I think continues to say to me that he does have something to fear.
All right, putting John Brennan's blind contempt and hatred for President Trump aside, we have even more revelations to bring you showing that the deep state is starting to crack. According to a new report, the Wall Street Journal's Kim Strassel, there are now serious issues with the FBI's, quote, Papadopoulos, who nobody ever heard of, and that narrative after the alleged informant in the case publicly contradicted the FBI's own claims that the one-time low-level Trump advisor discussed the hacked Democratic emails. And remember, the now infamous 2016 Trump Tower meeting between Donald Trump Jr., a Russian lawyer, a Russian-American lobbyist, and a few others? Oh, we have new information recently unearthed, a transcript from a 2017 Senate hearing that the Russian-American lobbyist admitted to personally knowing Hillary Clinton and some of the people who worked in her campaign. So what was someone who knew Hillary Clinton doing in that meeting? Is the media going to report on that? It's unbelievable. Gets more insane every day. We'll have more on this also later in the show. Also tonight, let's turn to the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein. You know, the guy that said Comey should be fired, the guy that signed the last FISA warrant based on the phony dossier that Clinton bought and paid for. She used a foreign agent to put together, funneling money through a law firm, then to GPS, then to the foreign agent. Russian lies, Russian government lies to manipulate you, the American people. Well, last night we showed you how Rosenstein's clear conflicts of interest surrounding this ongoing Russia probe, specifically, his key role in firing Comey. He's witness A in that whole investigation, and he's the one that appointed Mueller. Now, finally, people in D.C. are getting what we have been telling you. There are growing calls tonight for Rod Rosenstein to recuse himself. That includes Senator Lindsey Graham. Welcome aboard, Senator. He is asking three very important questions. Quote, do you consider yourself a potential witness in the Mueller investigation regarding the firing of Director Comey by President Trump? If not, do you consider yourself a potential witness in the Mueller investigation regarding the firing of Director Comey by President Trump? If not, why not? He recommended it. Yeah, he's a witness. And if so, by the way, you should recuse yourself from further interactions with oversight of the Mueller investigation. Thankfully, finally, someone saying what we have been saying and calling for over and over for months. The Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, it's time for you to answer those questions. We know the answers, and then recuse yourself and get out of the way, because you are the most conflicted person in all of this. Not the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. And by the way, great news for me tonight. Pay close attention. Remember when Senator Chuck Schumer said that you better not mess with the intel community because they're going to get you 6 ways to Sunday? This is great news for me. Best-selling author Jerome Corsi. He's the author of this book. It's out now in bookstores, on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. It's called Killing the Deep State. You might remember him. He was back. Remember the group against John Kerry, Vietnam Vets for Truth? He was one of them. He's saying that yours truly, that I, Sean Hannity, am the next target of the deep state. Wow, isn't it so great to know that these corrupt officials with their backs against the wall, that are desperate people do desperate things, the people that have the most powerful tools of intelligence, they're now going after me. Okay, really? So sadly, after all we have learned, you know, now we have Jerome Corsi's prediction. It doesn't surprise me. Isn't that sad? Are we the United States of America, or are we going to be the former Soviet Union, or are we going to be Venezuela? I promise you this one thing. I'm never stopping, ever. Here to help break down this damning new report is the Hill's John Solomon. John, good to see you, sir. Quick question. You think Corsi could be right?
I don't know. I hope not. I hope that people stay within the law at all times, right? You don't want to see freelancing
Haven't
or
you
retribution.
been told by people that certain things were happening to you?
There have been times where people have raised questions about our reporters like myself being surveilled. And, of course, in the past, the FBI did illegally intercept my mail 10 years ago. So there's a public record of the FBI apologizing to me for taking my mail after I broke all the stories about what the FBI knew before 9/11.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. And, again, if that's the case, if people that are trying to get to the truth and exposing corruption then become targets of the deep state and those that have these tools of intelligence, you could say goodbye to the Constitution because it doesn't exist.
Well,
and
let's hope that's not the case.
And by the way, you might have been unmasked, right?
Don't know. I don't have any evidence of it, and I try to stay focused on what I can report. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. London bridges falling down, curious origins of FBI's Trump-Russia probe. This is huge, including the new struck page memos that you've discovered. Let's talk about it all.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Whenever something's going on in Washington and people tell you there's no political pressure, I just don't believe it. There's always political pressure in Washington when there's something as big as a hot football like the Russia election investigation. And these text messages are really the first to really get at the idea that FBI agents felt political pressure. They were worried that they used an expletive to describe their brethren at the Obama Justice Department might be leaking. And probably the most seminal and most important text message that has raised a lot of concern with the people I talked to is a declaration after a meeting at the FBI on August 5th that the Obama White House, quote, is running this thing. And we don't know what that means yet, except that you can interpret that the FBI agents had some fear that the White House was somehow going to become involved in the Russia case. And that's the first word that we've seen in a documentary sense that suggests that.
John, what you're saying here, and if we just look at the face of the struck page text here,
right.
They're pinning this whole thing on the Obama White House, that the Obama White House is running it. Now,
they certainly have that fear. Yeah.
What's that?
They have that fear. They feared at that moment that this was about to be politically hijacked, either by the CIA, the Justice Department, or the White House run by Barack Obama.
That's part of it, but don't they at one point say that it's being run? And my interpretation is they're saying it is being run there.
Somebody said in a meeting that they went to that the White House is now running this. That's right. That's what they came back and said in that text message.
All right. So I guess at this particular point, we go back to a big problem that we have, and that is that the Department of Justice, Rod Rosenstein in particular, and others, they have been obstructing, they have been stonewalling. We have separation of powers, co-equal branches of government. We have a constitutional role for Congress, which is oversight. And guess what? They're preventing them from doing their job, knowing what you know. If we get that information, how devastating is it for them?
Well, there's a very important person quoted in my latest column, and that is the former head of intelligence for the FBI, ironically under Robert Mueller, who says that from what he has seen and the stuff I talked to him about and what he has seen on his own, that Congress has legitimate, serious questions that should be answered by the Justice Department. This evidence that we have now, these new emails showing that the people who became the informers and the informants, college professors and ambassadors and opposition researchers for Hillary Clinton, were making their contacts with the Trump administration long before there was a predicated investigation. The rule says no source activity until you have a predicated investigation. These emails suggest that there was some source activity, some targeting going on. And if Bob Mueller's former intelligence chief said this raises questions, I think we should listen to him.
John Solomon, thank you. Huge breaking news tonight, and we're going to stay on this story. We'll get back to it next week, I promise. We will follow the bouncing ball here, something the media can't do. All right, we have more breaking news tonight. Her brand new column, her brand new report, investigative reporter, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter. Sarah, let's get into yours. And it's very clear. It's, you know, this is a big story also. And you're also corroborating and confirming a lot of John's story.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what we see before the FBI actually opened its official investigation, it was a counterintelligence investigation, which means they were gathering as much information as possible from everywhere. And they could. They actually, and I'm not talking about just the Bureau, I'm talking about other intelligence agencies, foreign intelligence, the Great Britain, Germany, Estonia, Poland. Now, we're a member of the Five Eyes, and that doesn't include Germany,
Explain
Estonia,
the
and
Five
Poland.
Eyes.
Okay, that's Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, and Great Britain. And we share information with one another. That means if we have information that's pertinent to the U.S., we share it. Remember with Alexander Downer, the ambassador who shared the information with the United States on his conversation with
By the way,
Papadopoulos.
we got to remind people, Downer donated $25 million to the Clinton Foundation, okay?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And John, and remember, before the FBI interviewed him, the State Department had to get involved. That would mean John Kerry knows about this too, and that goes back to John's report. It goes to the White House. Now it goes also to the Secretary of State's office.
Well, we have to ask ourselves, Sean, what information are we trading back and forth? And this also would mean that Brennan, who is head of the CIA, DNI Clapper, Director of National Intelligence, would be well aware of this because this is a counterintelligence investigation involving something very specific, involving the Trump campaign members. And that's very important. That doesn't mean that this would just be at a lower level. This would be at a higher level, a principal level, which means that Brennan was very well aware of what was going on. And what I'd like to know is, did the British share the information with us first on some of these players, or did we ask for specific information?
But this is important.
How was the exchange?
Yep. And this is important because all these foreign players are involved. The timeline is way off than the story, that the narrative that they've been saying. That means people have been lying dramatically here. And then we got an IG report coming out, and I'm told as many as 28 people that have knowledge of the Clinton email server scandal, 28 of them, FBI people, want to be subpoenaed so they can tell the story about corruption at the highest levels of the bureau that they love.
Absolutely. There's a lot of FBI agents that want to come out and speak. A lot of them are current agents, which makes it very difficult for them. So they need to be subpoenaed. So these are things that Congress needs to act on, Congress needs to do so that they can come out and tell their stories.
Unbelievable reporting. Thank you, Sarah Carter. You just keep breaking story after story. We're going to stay on this. This is getting interesting. When we come back, we'll get legal analysis. Greg Jarrett, David Limbaugh on this big breaking news night, and the Korean summit is on, and great economic news. All right, joining us now with more reaction to tonight's opening monologue, we have attorney David Limbaugh. Full disclosure, even though I said it 1,000 times, David has done all of my contracts in radio and TV. Also, the author of the soon-to-be #1 New York Times bestseller, The Russian Hoax, The Illicit Scheme to Clear Hillary Clinton Framed Donald Trump. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Let me begin with you, Greg. And when I hear John Solomon say what he just said in the last segment, and Sarah Carter, what she is reporting tonight, the idea that we now have new text messages, you're aware of it, you had it in your hands last night as I did, we weren't fully able to go full bore, that in fact this goes to the Obama White House, that they're running the operation. What should happen?
Well, look, it's very obvious that the CIA Director John Brennan, James Clapper of the DNI, and the Obama White House, and likely the president himself, were all in on this. Brennan was the instigator of the hoax. He grabbed a hold of the fictitious anti-Trump dossier with his teeth, and he ran with it, propagating it on Capitol Hill, trying to damage candidate Trump, and then thereafter, trying to destroy his presidency. And whenever he shows up on television, as he did yesterday, bashing Trump, he only reinforces the notion that he was the guy with the most to gain. He wanted to perpetuate his own power.
Communist?
Pardon me?
Oh,
yeah.
Did he vote for? All right. How did he become the CIA director in the first place? Why do I think a communist as CIA director is a little dangerous? Let me go to this whole issue. The whole narrative, David Limbaugh, was about Papadopoulos and Downer getting drunk together, as Greg said the first time, four-way hearsay. And we now know Downer they had to thread a needle. The Kerry State Department's involved, so that means, again, the timing is off, the timeline is off. the whole story is crumbling. It began a lot earlier, but Downer's also a guy that donated $25 million to the Clinton Foundation. So we got some huge conflicts again here.
Yes, and there's a suspicious amount of Clinton involvement in all this supposedly neutral FBI investigation. Not only was Downer, had he donated $25 million to the Clinton Foundation, this Russian lobbyist in the Trump Tower meeting had Clinton ties. And back to your point about the Obama involvement, you know, why is it so hard to believe about Obama, who was willing to weaponize and politicize the IRS and EPA, that he would do so to the DOJ and FBI? Strzok and Page, we now know from these texts, feared Obama wanted to hijack the campaign. We know from the investigation. We know from previous texts that he wanted to know everything. They were worried about him being soft on Russia, which is very ironic through all this. And we now have FBI agents, according to Sarah Carter, who want to come forward and tell on the record some of the improprieties. There is no way, and I think...
Yeah. Go ahead, finish. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I don't think there's any way that Trey Gowdy is right about this. If he were right about this, and I have a lot of respect for him, that there wouldn't have been such an effort to protect Hillary Clinton. If it was just neutral spies, they would have issued a protective briefing to Donald Trump. And we would have known a lot more about it.
Exactly. All they had to do is go to Trump. This is what makes it all so sinister, and it's starting early. Their timeline is off, Greg. They changed the rules, the Obama administration. If we remember, they were sharing this intel with agencies, 16 or 17 of them, which they had never done before, and the whole Papadopoulos, issue is just blown out of the water.
Yeah, the FBI, with the help of a complicit New York Times, perpetuated this myth that it was Papadopoulos. That's an outright lie. They're trying to conceal the truth.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to have to leave it.
Why did they lie about...
Yeah. Okay. That's for David.
Why did they lie about Papadopoulos having emails when all he said was he heard they had dirt on him? Why all these suspicious lies if they weren't trying to set up Trump?
It's all falling apart. These stories are blockbuster. We'll have a lot more coming up. All right. Also, we got the North Korean summit on. Great news on the economy. The deep state's crumbling. And outrage tonight. All these people on the left, their vile comments. Samantha Bee about Ivanka Trump. We got Geraldo Rivera and much more. Stay with us in the latest about North Korea.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Trace Gallagher. We're learning new information tonight about President Trump's decision to launch those airstrikes against Syria in April. The Justice Department is advising the president the strikes on 3 military sites in Syria was legal. Government lawyers concluded the president had, quote, reasonably determined that the airstrikes were in the national interest and would not constitute war. That's based on information from a report released earlier today. And there may soon be a summit between President Trump and Russia's President Vladimir Putin. The Wall Street Journal reporting that the White House is planning on the meeting to ease growing tensions between the two nations. The proposed summit is in the early stages and would likely focus on Syria, nuclear arms control, and Ukraine. The nations must also agree on a location and a date. If news breaks out, we'll break in. I'm Trace Gallagher. Now back to Sean Hannity.
All right, so liberal TBS host Samantha Bee on Wednesday night launched a vile, disgusting, vicious attack against Ivanka Trump. Watch this.
Ivanka Trump, who works at the White House, chose to post the second most oblivious tweet we've seen this week. You know, Ivanka, that's a beautiful photo of you and your child, but let me just say, one mother to another, do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless. He listens to you. Put on something tight and low cut and tell your father to stop it. Tell him it was an Obama thing and see how it goes, okay?
Now, although both TBS and Samantha Bee have apologized, she's facing a major backlash from critics who see a double standard in the wake of how Roseanne Barr was treated and so many others are treated. And we talked a lot about this earlier in the week. Even the president weighed in on the controversy, tweeting out, why aren't they firing no talent Samantha Bee for the horrible language used on her low-rating show? A total double standard, but that's okay. We're winning, and we'll be doing so for a long time to come. However, some on the left are sticking up for Bee, even trying to protect her. Look, the Television Academy reportedly blocked the media from attending an event last night. She was honored last night. And meanwhile, speaking of liberal double standards, well, CNN grandstander Jim Acosta keeps proving his anti-Trump bias. Listen to what he said about President Trump's meeting with Kim Kardashian on prison reform this week. Take a listen.
Forget about the fact that Kim Kardashian is here at the White House today and what planet that is anything resembling normal, because it's not. She shouldn't be here talking about prison reform. It's very nice that she is here, but that's not a serious thing to have happened here at the White House.
Actually, if you read the case, it's actually a really serious matter. And Acosta, by the way, sang a very different tune while covering the singer John Legend's activism on prison reform when Barack Obama was president. Real consistency, Jim Acosta.
I'm going to push the president to get more involved in criminal justice reform. I'm going to suggest some ideas that we think could help improve the situation.
If you change your mind about running for office, give CNN the scoop.
I will. I will.
John Legend.
Don't hold your breath.
Don't hold your breath. We might just a little bit. But John Legend, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. It's great talking with you.
Thank you.
All right, here with reaction, former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, author of the bestseller The Geraldo Show, Fox News correspondent at large Geraldo Rivera, and South Carolina Republican Governor Henry McMaster is with us. Geraldo, let me start with you, because this is really interesting. If you look at the case in particular, this was a first offense, lifetime sentence for a woman who had a lot of personal problems, needed money, got involved in drugs. I actually think the case that Kim Kardashian was pushing was a very powerful one and one we really need to pay attention to.
Oh, I think there's no doubt that Kim Kardashian's appearance at the White House was totally appropriate. I mean, Sean Spicer can answer that a lot better than I, but it just seemed to me that she was really bringing attention to a very necessary issue, one the White House has now been grappling with thanks to this new legislation on sentencing reform and so forth. A lifetime sentence, no parole, no possibility of parole. She didn't murder anybody. So I really do think that Kim Kardashian's visit to the White House was absolutely appropriate. Samantha Bee, you know, the hypocrisy on the left. I mean, we should be outraged by both Roseanne Barr and Samantha Bee. And I think that, just very briefly, what we should do is let the victims of their insults tell us what to do. Valerie Jarrett has responded very graciously to Roseanne Barr. Ivanka Trump has been beyond gracious when it comes to Samantha Bee. Maybe, you know, when they grovel and they beg forgiveness, maybe we give forgiveness, Sean. I have a Christian view today.
What is your take?
Let me show you my shocked face, because I think in both of these circumstances, there's nothing that shocks me, because one is the idea that Jim Acosta is deciding what's an appropriate issue to be discussed at the White House, and just put the merits of the case aside, and I think Geraldo valiantly displayed what they are, but the bottom line is it's not up to the media, never mind Jim Acosta, to decide what's a valid issue to be discussed or not. It's up to the President of the United States and other elected and government officials to decide what issues are going to be addressed, the concerns the American people have, and every American has a right to decide what issues are important to them and to advocate their government to support them one way or the other. The idea, by the way, on the other piece, on Samantha Bee, look, I believe I made a lot of mistakes at the White House that I asked for forgiveness for, and I think people were very gracious in many cases.
With all due respect, you're too hard on yourself. You did not make that many mistakes.
Thank you, but my point is this. I think that when people screw up and they apologize, they should be given forgiveness. I think that, but the double standard that exists, whether it's Samantha Bee or Joanne Reed or Joy Reid, these other people, when they make a mistake, the left absolves them and doesn't, sort of excuses them and explains why what they said wasn't that bad and that there are no consequences. But I agree with Geraldo again. I mean, Ivanka's been so unbelievably graceful about this. And this isn't the first time. You remember Julia Offie, the former Politico reporter now at The Atlantic, said a very similar thing. And what was the thing then? Well, she didn't really mean it. So these disgusting and reprehensible tactics by so-called journalists and people on the left get excused and washed away every single time.
Yeah, and look, and Henry, by the way, good luck in your run for a governor down in South Carolina. I was down there recently, beautiful state, and I have a lot of friends down there. Yes. I look at this and I'm like, okay, this is now an environment I've read everybody's apologies, and I'll give Roseanne. I mean, she's apologized again and again, and I sense that there's real sincerity here. It was a 2:45 a.m. tweet, not a good thing. I have my suspicions. What happens? Geraldo knows a thing or two about tweeting.
I know very well, very well. No tweeting after midnight.
But what about the point everybody wants to silence voices they don't agree with? I have never called for the canceling of any show, the firing of any host. Bill Maher going back to politically incorrect on ABC. It was people like Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh that said, you know what? Don't fire him.
Well, Sean, these people are just, I think they've just gone crazy. President Trump is enormously popular here. If he had run today, he'd get more votes than he got when he stomped the opposition the last time. But his tweet was exactly right. He's saying what everybody in South Carolina's thinking. He's 100% right. I just don't know what's happened to these people on the left. I don't know if this hatred of the president or the hatred of what he stands for, which is what America stands for. I think something's happened to these people, and they're making fools of themselves. I think they're so deep in the tank, they don't even realize it. And sure, they'll apologize now until the next time, and then the next time. And I think the people just had enough of it.
But and Geraldo, this is a point that I always go back to. As much as I'd like to make everybody in America watch this show, I have to do a good show and invite them invite me into their home, if you will, and that's how you gain an audience. And I think the American people are smart. We sell them short, and we feel that we have to silence.
Well, in that regard, I just want to say, referencing something, Sean, you said at the beginning of this program this evening about the deep state coming for you. If they come for you, they're going to have to come through me, because I'm going to be there, fighting off these people. But
if I have Geraldo in my bunker, I'm safe. There's no.
I wonder what's happened to the level of civility. I mean, it is so low down and dirty now. It's the candidate for governor in the great state of South Carolina alluded to it. I think that there has really been the country is so divided, and the people that hate the president hate him with such vehemence, with such where do they get this? I mean, do they really feel this way about dictators and you are others that are really criminals?
But understand, if he's successful with the economy, look at these numbers. He's successful in North Korea. He's keeping his promises. We'll become an energy independent, the biggest tax cuts. That's bad news for Democrats, Geraldo. They want to win in 2018, and for them to win, he's got to fail.
Well, I think that is so desperately melancholy that they root against their own country for partisan purposes.
Let me get Sean in for the last word. Go ahead, Sean.
I would just say the one thing about the Samantha Bee thing that troubles me more than anything is it was pre-taped. They thought about it, they scripted it, and they still went ahead with it. That's vastly different than making a really sort of stepping in it without thinking about it. So I really think this case was really different than a lot of the other ones.
All right, guys, good to see you. And Henry McMaster, by the way, welcome to the program. Good luck in your run down there in South Carolina.
Thank you, Sean.
We wish you the best. When we come back, we'll tell you about the historic meeting. This is history in the making. The summit's back on. Great news for the world. Listen, the president said it may take 2-3 meetings. Let's see. We'll tell you all about it. We'll get the latest from the White House when we come back.
We're going to be June 12th. We'll be in Singapore. It'll be a beginning. I don't say, and I've never said it happens in one meeting. You're talking about years of hostility, years of problems, years of really hatred between so many different nations. But I think you're going to have a very positive result in the end, not from one meeting. I think it's going to be a process that we deserve to have. I mean, we really deserve. They want it. We think it's important. And I think we would be making a big mistake if we didn't have it. I think we're going to have a relationship, and it'll start on June 12th.
History in the making. The president earlier today announcing his upcoming summit with Kim Jong-un. It is back on June the 12th in Singapore. And the president's remarks came after a 2-hour meeting in the Oval Office with the #2 most powerful man in North Korea. Joining us now with reaction to all of this, former deputy assistant to the president, Fox News national security strategist, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, retired CIA senior intelligence officer, Fox News contributor, Daniel Hoffman. It's amazing to me that the president pulls out seconds. It's like within 24 hours. Oh, no, we didn't mean what we said. We got a missile launching site being dismantled, Kim crossing the DMZ, the first time in 18 years high-ranking officials in the United States. We got the hostages released, and no missiles are being fired over Japan or known to the world at this moment, Dr. Gorka, and he didn't pay a dime. It's remarkable.
Yes, let alone billions of dollars. Imagine if this had happened any time in the last 25 years, whether it was Republican administration or Democrat one, if a summit had been canceled, the normal diplomatic protocols would have meant that it would have maybe happened a year from now or 18 months from now.
Good point.
The president cancels it. He has a very hard letter. He plays hardball, but he leaves that last paragraph open saying, this is so important to both of our countries. If you want to go ahead with it, send me a letter, give me a call. What happens? Within hours, a couple of days later, that letter is hand-delivered to the Oval Office. It's a different way of doing politics. It's a different way of doing diplomacy, and it gets results.
And I'm very impressed with Secretary of State Pompeo. I really am. I think he's been amazing, an amazing addition for the president. You know, Daniel,
Yes.
we were discussing this. I think the president, you were concerned going back a few weeks that you wanted to make sure the president didn't overpromise, underdeliver, although we've already gotten a lot out of North Korea in a good way. And the president was very clear this is a process. Nothing will be signed on June the 12th, that it may take. It would be great if it was one meeting. It would be great if this happens, but it may not, and may take 1, 2, 3, 4 meetings. They can go as fast or slow as they want.
Right. I was a little concerned at the beginning that I think our citizenry might have expected immediate results, and this is an extraordinary, difficult challenge for us. But what I would really highlight is today's meeting, which was just so valuable for us. Secretary Pompeo had met twice with Kim Young-chol, North Korea's former chief of military intelligence and a guy who's been responsible for their nuclear negotiations. You're right. He's Kim Jong-un's right-hand man.
What do you know about him?
Well, he's a 4-star general. He was a former bodyguard to Kim Jong-un's family. He's extraordinarily well trusted. And what Secretary Pompeo did today was essentially a warm turnover to the president. And these relationships matter. This is what we base our productive negotiations on, these sorts of high-level relationships on which we can build for...
And Daniel, as you're speaking, I remember I was watching this live today. We can keep that up on the screen, what we were just showing, and that's the president literally walking him out to his car. You could read how friendly this all was. You could see, you know, it was supposed to be hand over the letter and leave, as the president said, but it ended up being a 2-hour meeting. Sounds a lot like what the meetings that were scheduled with the president of China. Started out as 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half hour. They go on for 4 hours.
Right.
So clearly, there's something going on here.
And tactically, it makes so much sense. You know, we relied in the past on 6-party talks. 2 of those parties, Russia and China, do not have our best interests at heart. And what we're seeing right now is the president expertly mounting an effective diplomatic charge at North Korea with showing our strength and at the same time being open to negotiation. We saw it playing out today in full force.
Yeah. As you were watching this unfold today, Dr. Gorka, I'm just curious because you know this president so well, and so many Americans, especially those on the left and in the media, do not understand he is the negotiator.
He is. He's a people person. Read the book, The Art of the Deal. The first chapter is a day in the life of Donald Trump. And in it, he's constantly meeting people. They count the number. He makes 40 phone calls in that day as he's building his empire. It's always about results. And then it was about building Trump International. Now it's about getting America back on track. And in the last year and a half, he's been crushing it.
All right, guys, really good to see you. Appreciate it. Amazing. Economy's great. North Korea's back on. Oh, and the deep state is crumbling. Good news. We'll continue right after this.